Here we have The Rock setting up a piece of some long-term booking for the following year's WrestleMania. But the question today is, can the Great One still achieve this feat? Can he still be a part of long-term plans? Well, if you ask many fans, they'll tell you, no. But are they right, and what exactly is long-term booking anyway? Now for some, this is a pretty straightforward answer, but for others, well, it's not quite as clear as they think it is. But either way, it serves as the topic of this episode, because today... I want to give a big thank you to all my amazing Patreon supporters such as Ron Hawthorne, Mangy Stray, Dakari Garment, Mr. J, and The Reflection of Perfection. Thank you for all your support as you're helping to keep this channel going, and all of you can help as well by signing up on my Patreon page. Alright, so when the whole nonsense between Cody Rhodes and The Rock all started, there were some fans out there who said The Rock does nothing for a long-term booking. But that's not exactly the whole truth, and thinking that it is kind of overlooks some pre-established wrestling terms that I think some fans have kind of forgotten. It appears that for some reason, a lot of fans out there think long-term booking can only mean long-reigning champions. But need I remind you that short-term champions do exist and can be one piece of a giant puzzle. For instance, there is such a thing as a transitional champion, someone who is booked to win the belt only to facilitate it quickly to another champion. That can still be part of a long story arc, and it can also be a part of a long business strategy going forward. But nevertheless, there are some fans out there who mistakenly believe that if The Rock were to dethrone Roman Reigns, then any and all long-term booking plans go completely kaput, which is simply not the case. Even if The Rock is only around for a short while, is a part-time champion, or isn't even champion for very long, as all of that can be written as part of a bigger picture. For example, and it's just an example, there's no conclusive evidence to support that this was ever going to happen, but what if it was revealed that Cody stepped aside for The Rock under the condition that The Rock's first title defense would be against Cody, and The Rock agrees to that, and their match happens at Madison Square Garden, where Cody finally becomes WWE Champion. This can then lead up to a feud where Cody goes against Roman, but this time Cody's the defending champion, with Roman stating that he never beat him. This leads to Cody getting his long overdue victory over the Tribal Chief, and not only that, but he follows through on his promise by taking away everything else, all the other members of the Bloodline, Paul Heyman, and finally finishes the story. And this is just part of Cody's long title reign, which includes many other feuds and storylines. Now you see that's just one example of how The Rock can be used as part of long-term booking. So it's imperative that fans break themselves of this idea that long-term booking only means long-term title reigns. The truth is that long-term booking has to do with how far in advance booking has planned out, and unfortunately for us, well, we're never gonna know that because that's information we're just not privy to. But as a byproduct of that, in order to try and understand the business better, there are some fans who will gravitate to the information that they do have at their disposal, which unfortunately tends to be a lot of things that they see on screen, such as who wins the title and how long they hold it for and how long they're around. Or worse yet, they rely on information that they get off of the dirt sheets. Ugh. And while this information does have a value to an extent, you're never really going to know what's going on behind the scenes if you're just focused on what's on your television. The point of the matter is, it doesn't matter who wins the belt or how long they hold the title for, it can all still be a part of long-term booking if that's all part of the plan. Although there are still some fans out there who feel that if The Rock were to dethrone Roman Reigns, this would still be bad even if it is a part of long-term booking because, well, it could lead to what's known as a short-term spike. Now, how bad is that? Well, people like to use the term short-term spike as if it was a bad thing when it comes to professional wrestling booking, which it isn't, or at least it doesn't have to be. Although this sentiment is based off of some logic, as what people should actually be concerned with is what real ones know as hot shot booking. Booking something just to try and get a quick financial gain at the expense of your own audience, causing you to bring in less money overall and possibly even making less money than you brought in from the hot shotting to begin with. Now, this tends to be a major critique of hardcore wrestling, as the fans that are brought in just for the ultra violence either get bored of it or you keep upping the ante so much that you end up alienating sponsors and families from seeing your shows.
Won't somebody please think of the children?
Now, when it comes to a short-term spike on the other hand, that is a different story, or at least it can be. For example, let's just look at WrestleMania itself. It, by far and away, makes more money than any other WWE event. And so you could look at WrestleMania season as a mere short-term spike. Does this mean that WWE shouldn't do it because all the other shows don't do as much business? No, of course not. And so, if you book somebody to be a transitional champion or let them hold on to the belt for a month, and for that short time period you bring in a bunch of merchandise sales and a bunch of ratings, and then afterwards you continue with business as usual, then what's the problem? If The Rock being WWE champion brings in 500,000 more viewers every SmackDown, or sells $1 million in replica Brahma Bull belts, and then The Rock drops the belt to Cody Rhodes a month later, WWE doesn't have to give any of that money back. And so this results in WWE making a big chunk of change that they wouldn't have made without The Rock. However, I'm sure there's still some of you out there who see a problem with this strategy. Okay, so I think I'm gonna have to go over this again, but I'll try to keep it brief, as I'm sure there's some of you out there who are convinced that this is exactly what hotshotting is all about, because you think that if The Rock were to dethrone Roman Reigns, he'll just alienate fans. And while, anything is possible, the reality is the pattern, as we have seen laid out time and time again, indicates that that's probably not true, as WWE fans nowadays are really hard to drive away in droves. There might be minor fluctuations, but for the most part, people just stay, and overall, WWE just keeps on growing, no matter how much vitriol the fans have on the internet. Look how many fans were against WWE going to Saudi Arabia, but yet their stocks skyrocketed. Angry Philadelphia fans were really upset when Roman Reigns won the Rumble in 2015. Then 3 years later, when the Rumble returned to Philly, their attendance was even higher. Beat the traffic at Backlash, the following pay-per-view, attendance goes up even still. Super Cena beats Rusev at WrestleMania. The following year, WrestleMania 32, and they set a brand new attendance record. Is it any wonder why WWE really doesn't take all the complaining on the internet seriously? And furthermore, to get closer to the point, let's look at all the long heel title reigns or all the undefeated streaks that could have been used to elevate someone new, but really just went to establish talent. Hulk Hogan's first title reign, Andre the Giant's 15-year-long undefeated streak, the WrestleMania undefeated streak, AJ Styles' second title reign, CM Punk's extra long title reign, and in each of these incidences, you'll see that it was someone who was already a made man who took those records down. And speaking of CM Punk specifically, let's talk about the precise veteran who took that belt off of Punk, because it was The Rock, who was being used as a transitional champion to bring the belt back to Cena. And through all of this, WWE, again, financially has been doing just fine and has been growing. Now, another issue that a lot of fans want to bring up is that in terms of WWE's long-term strategy, they have to be focusing on the stars that will be around in the future more often and full-time, and not the ones that are around part-time. But I should remind you that our current WWE champion, Roman Reigns, is a part-timer, and the champion before him, Brock Lesnar, was also a part-timer. But nevertheless, I do understand and agree there is a need to get over new talent to build new stars for the future. The only thing is there's a whole plethora of ways to get somebody over and to endear them with the audience, and I think The Rock is doing exactly that right now as we speak. There's more than one way to get somebody over, and there's so much more you could do for a wrestler other than giving them a win that everybody knows is predetermined. And WWE knows this, and they've known this for quite some time, which is why they're just so good at puppeteering our emotions. The point is, if The Rock is only around temporarily, no matter what happens going forward, The Rock's sheer involvement, even if it's only fleeting, has gotten more people talking about Cody, more invested in Cody, than they ever would have been if The Rock didn't come in to take Cody's place. Maybe they fell into it by accident, maybe they did it on purpose, but either way, your love for the American Nightmare Cody Rhodes came with just a little bit of Rock-shaped help. Alright, so now bringing you back to the whole idea of short-term spikes and long-term booking, there are several other examples beyond that of just Cody versus The Rock that we have to talk about. And the weird thing is, we don't really talk about these, but they do serve as an example of exactly the kind of thing that I'm talking about. Okay, so I have to ask, if people are so concerned with long-term booking, then how come more people aren't complaining about, well, Bad Bunny? Here's someone who came in, brought in a lot of merchandise sales, and then quickly disappears before showing up every once in a blue moon, if that. But more importantly, let's look at someone like Logan Paul, who's brought in specifically because of his YouTube views, but yet he's consistently being outdrawn in that department by other WWE superstars. However, even with that being so, WWE still has the United States Championship around his waist. And what a waste it is, especially since Triple H did a lot to rebound that belt when he took over creative. And so here we have a perfectly good example of someone who is sticking around on a regular basis, but yet they're doing more damage to the product than Bad Bunny did, who brought in a short-term spike, serving as proof that things in the short term aren't always bad. And it also proves that being around for a long time isn't always good for things in the long term. And yes, I am aware that Logan Paul himself is also a part-timer, but he has shown up a lot more often than The Rock. And so I'm trying to say that just because you stick around for a while doesn't mean that you necessarily do good things for WWE in the long run. And just like all the shirts that Bad Bunny sold, just because you're around fleetingly doesn't mean that you can't do a lot of good for WWE. And so I'm ultimately saying that for a lot of us fans who really want to analyze the industry, it would help if you thought about it not in the way you think wrestling is supposed to go, but just actually look at it the way it is. Well, there you go, my follow-up video on a lot of people's complaints about long-term booking and the whole Rock situation. But what do you think? Let me know down in the comments, and make sure that you leave a like, as this is the Thinking Fans channel, and make sure that you're subscribed as well. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to all the wonderful Patreons out there. And as always, Dave knows.